Now, on Up Front, the deadliest shooting spree in U.S. history. It's been 1 week. Today, Senator Ron Johnson on the investigation and the war of words over gun control in the nation's capital. Then, Clinton versus Trump. Which way are Wisconsin voters leaning? And the growing number of people who may skip the election altogether. And road repairs. We need them, but how are we going to pay for them? The divide among state Republicans. Can they find common ground?
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. 1 week ago at this time, we were starting to get details of the tragic breaking news out of Orlando, the nation's deadliest mass shooting. The man responsible, Omar Mateen, an American-born Muslim, opened fire during a 3-hour rampage at the Pulse nightclub while pledging his allegiance to ISIS. In the wake of the shooting, we've seen sorrow, but we've also seen tension and debate among our nation's leaders concerning gun control and national security.
Those who defend the easy accessibility of assault weapons should meet these families and explain why that makes sense.
It's a tough situation, but he's largely, to a large extent, he's blaming guns, and I'm going to save your Second Amendment, folks.
So where are we 1 week later? Joining us now is Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Senator Johnson, thanks very much for being with us. What do you and your committee need to know about Orlando at this moment in time?
Well, what we're really trying to do is do our appropriate oversight work on really the events leading up to Orlando. You know, what exactly did our law enforcement officials know? How did they handle the information? When did they initiate investigations? When did they close them out? What could have we done better? And this is really, you know, we're going to add what we find out about Orlando to what we've known and found out about San Bernardino, Fort Hood, Texas, Chattanooga, Tennessee. How about the successful result here in Milwaukee? That's kind of under everybody's radar screen, or off everybody's radar screen, the fact that we foiled a plot because of good police work, good work by the FBI. We could have had in Orlando right here at the Masonic Temple here in Milwaukee. So I just want to accumulate all that information so that we can find out what went right, what went wrong, and what we can do from a standpoint of public policy to prevent these tragedies in the future. But Mike, let's be clear. The root cause of this problem is Islamic terrorism. And we have to defeat ISIS. We have to, from a standpoint of the civilized world, we have to tenaciously be committed to eradicating Islamic terror from the world. It's a long-term project, but that's what we have to do.
Very briefly, some people have been critical of the FBI. They said they've had contact with this guy, and this just should not have happened. Are you ready to be critical of the FBI?
No, I've got a great deal of respect for Director Comey, the men and women of the FBI that are trying to keep this nation safe, really doing such an enormously difficult task. You know, how do you deal with the not guilty yet? These are not easy questions. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback. It's easy to second guess. I guess it's my job, though, and we're going to do that. When you take a look at those initial interviews, you know, the FBI's response at least seems appropriate, but you know, we have to get the full information. That's why we're doing all these oversight letters to a number of different companies and different entities and find out. And trust me, Director Comey, Secretary Johnson, they're doing that exact same post-action review to see what we can do to improve.
You've been in communication with Facebook because the gunman apparently had a number of communications on Facebook about possible motive, why he did this. Is Facebook cooperating with you?
Yes, and they have prior to this as well. They are being very cooperative. They've been doing a lot of good work. Other social media companies have been doing a lot of work trying to utilize their social media platform to counter the message coming out of ISIS. So, you know, this is not an adversary relationship by any means in terms of our oversight. We're just trying to get the facts, and you know, they've indicated to us that they want to work with us.
Do our gun laws need to change? That's what you're hearing from Democrats right now. They say this mass shooting and other mass shootings point to the need for change. Should there be any change in our gun laws?
Nobody wants to allow a terrorist or would-be terrorist to have access to any weapon. So there's a goal we all share. At the same time, take a look at the constitutional rights, the liberties that Islamic terror has already eroded in this country. So from my standpoint, I'm willing to take a look at any solution that will actually solve the problem, that will actually prevent these tragedies. I'm not interested in charade solutions, things that actually won't work. And I think that's the hurdle you have in any of these proposed gun control bills, is that you take a look at what they're proposing to do and you compare that against past tragedies and go, well, would have it solved that problem? So, I'm going to jealously guard our Second Amendment right to free speech, due process, our constitutional rights, but try and work in a bipartisan agreement to find a solution that would prevent weapons getting in the hands of terrorists. But again, the solution, Mike, is we've got to actually accomplish President Obama's stated goal: defeat ISIS. It's been 22 months, Mike.
I want to follow up on something you said. You said charade solutions. So a couple of the things being talked about are a ban on military-style semi-automatic weapons, or background checks for gun sales at gun shows or by the internet. Are those charade solutions, or are they something other than that?
Well, the whole debate over, quote, assault weapons. What is the addition? What's the real definition of that? Fully automatic rifles already banned.
Are banned.
Okay, so now you're talking about a rifle that looks like an assault rifle, but operates just like a hunting rifle. So they had an assault-style weapons ban in place for 10 years. Didn't work. I mean, the evidence showed that it didn't have any effect whatsoever, which is why they allowed that assault rifle ban to expire. So again, it maybe sounds good. I mean, you see that so many times in Washington, D.C. You pass a law that purports to do something, Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, doesn't exactly accomplish the goal. So again, I'm going to jealously guard our constitutional rights.
What about this notion of this no fly, no buy? If you're banned because you're on the terror watch list from flying, you should be banned from purchasing a gun. Are you okay with that?
Understand, I was in the secure briefing room with the United States senators. They don't fully understand what the database is, what these subset lists are. What they're talking about and debating right now is a very expansive list that would, again, nobody knows exactly what the criteria is for getting on that list. For example, let's say you have a coworker who's not that's upset with you, calls in a tip to the FBI. You just might get on that list. You don't even know it. How do you get off? So we need to protect due process. I'm happy to look at that no-fly list, which is the most narrow of the lists. Not many Americans are on that list. Most of the people on these lists, by the way, are foreigners. They can't buy a gun anyway. So let's actually get the facts. Let's understand what these lists are about, how law enforcement uses these. Director Comey is a little concerned about an outright ban on that because it could harm one of his investigations. So let's understand the lists, how law enforcement actually uses them, and try and find a bipartisan agreement to keep weapons out of the hand of terrorists.
Final question. It's about Donald Trump. A number of interesting developments this week. Double down on the Muslim ban seemed to suggest the president might be sympathetic toward Islamist extremists. Senator Bob Corker, who had supported Donald Trump, said he was discouraged by the tone of the presidential candidate. Are you discouraged?
There's a number of things that I disagree with Mr. Trump on, and I will state that plainly. I'll be honest. There are things I agree with him on. Growing our economy, strengthening our military, defeating ISIS, securing our border, his Supreme Court picks. So I'll support the areas of agreement. I'll be very honest if I disagree with him on his proposed solutions.
Senator Ron Johnson is the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, a Republican who's running for re-election. We appreciate your time today. Thanks very much for being with us. You bet. Johnson's Democratic rival, Russ Feingold, is also striking a cautious tone on the no-fly, no-buy proposal. Our editorial partner, WisPolitics.com, has more on the topic. Just go to the WisPolitics election blog. Coming up next on Upfront, the race for the White House. Trump, Clinton, Sanders. A new poll suggests which way Wisconsin voters are leaning, and the large number of people finding it hard to commit one way or the other.
Upfront with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.